Okay, I think we'll get rolling. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin. I'm with the Minnesota Safety Council, and thanks to all of you for joining today. The session's title, Together We Can Curb Distracted Driving, presented by Lisa Kahns. She's our Traffic Safety Program Manager with the Minnesota Safety Council and Minnesota Network of Employers for Traffic Safety Coordinator. And before Lisa gets started, just a couple of quick reminders. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Minnesota Nets website for later viewing. And please feel free to use the chat feature throughout this session to ask questions and share input. We really appreciate your participation today. So with that, thank you. And Lisa, take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Erin. Good afternoon. I am Lisa Kahns. I am with the Minnesota Safety Council, just celebrated my 30 years in traffic safety with them. And today we're going to talk about distracted driving. I say those words to you and I can only imagine what goes through your head. And, if we had an interactive conversation going on right now, I might say, okay, what's the one thing you're seeing out on our roads right now in terms of distracted driving that's just really getting under your skin? And one of those things that you might come up with is people are back on their phones. And they're texting and not paying attention. And we are going to talk about those things throughout this presentation today. And we're going to bust a few myths. We're going to raise some things up to your subconscious. And at the end, I will be providing resources that are readily available for you to use within your workplace or to share with friends and family. So the first thing I would like to do is I would like to ask all of you this question. You are on mute, and so this isn't going to be able to be interactive. If you want to unmute and then promise to mute yourself back, that'd be great if you just feel like shouting it out. But I want to ask you this. What color is a yield sign? What color is a yield sign? Now, when I do this in class with people, I will hear black and yellow, red and white. Is it red and white? Is it black and yellow? Some of you might be thinking to yourself black and yellow. Some of you might be thinking to yourself red and white. And a yield sign is certainly red and white. Now, some people will say black and yellow. Yield signs have been red and white since 1971. You sometimes can work with a novice driver, ask a novice driver who's just learned signs and shapes. And they too will see black and yellow because we automatically relate black and yellow to traffic safety. The reason I show this is because for those of you who are thinking black and yellow, who thought, oh, I really don't know, are we getting behind the wheel? One of the most dangerous things we do every single day, and we're looking, but we're not seeing. We're taking the infrastructure and taking the roadways around us for granted, and we think we know, but maybe we really don't know. So as I just mentioned, one of the most dangerous things we're going to do every day, and we have to be thinking about having our brain in the game. Distracted driving, what's going on around us, what's going on the roads behind us. Because here's the data, friends. Motor vehicle crashes are still the #1 cause of on and off the job unintentional death and the leading cause of injury death in the United States. So it does not matter if you're driving for work or at work. It does not matter if it's at 7 o'clock at night or Saturday morning. That potential crash and or injury is going to take you away from whatever it is that you enjoy doing most. It's going to take you away from your employer, who you are their most valuable asset, hands down, your friends and your family. This is national data. Every 5 seconds, a vehicle crash occurs. Every 10 seconds, an injury occurs. And every 12 seconds, someone is dying in a motor vehicle crash. We can do the math in the short amount of time we will spend here today on what's going on our roadways. And that's in epidemic levels. Every 5 seconds, a crash occurs. And unfortunately, what's happening right now is speed and distraction is still a leading contributing factor in these crashes and in these fatalities. Here's a glimpse of what's happened over the last few years. 22 data is still preliminary, so I end with 21. But we can see what's happened on our roadways around us through the pandemic and into 2022. 36,000 in 2019, nationally, 38 in 2020, 42,000 people passed on our roadways in 2021. I'd like for you to pause for a moment and think of the Twins Stadium. One Twins Stadium, completely sold out, holds about 41,000 people. They do not care what color, what shape, what size you are, or how old you are. All they ask for is a ticket to walk through the door. That is how many people, more than that, died on our roadways in 2021 nationwide. And you don't get a ticket. You don't get to plan for it. You don't get to write the date on the calendar. All you get to do is prepare for is the aftermath. And right here in our own backyard, our trajectory remained the same through 2019 through 2021. We were going in the wrong direction. The good news is this: things have settled a little. From 2021 until 2022, we went from 488 fatalities on our roadways to 446. As of this very day last year, we are at 57 versus 79. We're heading in the right direction, but please understand there's still room for an improvement. Our goal in Minnesota is 0. And our goal in Minnesota is 0 because we don't feel it's fair to go to any one family and say our goal is more than 0, but we're going to need 9 of yours and 6 of yours and 7 of yours. Therefore, as you can see, 446 is less than it was in 21. But back to those pre-pandemic numbers where they were drastically falling, we really need to work on that. And that's going to take all of us at this point. Through enforcement, through education, through engineering, we work together with the foundation of the TZD theory. But right now, it's about us taking our driving control back into that's our important responsibility when we get behind the wheel. No more blame game. He cut me off. She went too fast. Blame is so comforting. And what it's going to take is it's going to take for all of us to make sure those driving behaviors when we get behind the wheel are in check. Because here are the numbers. 40% of lost work hours are due to traffic-related injuries, 40%. That doesn't necessarily mean you. If you're someone, or your loved one happens to be involved in a crash or a serious crash, you are going to be by their bedside until they feel well or until they get out of the ICU or until they're able to be on their own. That's going to have a direct effect on your employer. On-the-job highway crashes cost employers, and you can see the calculations here, $26,000 per crash, $66,000 per million miles traveled, and about $78,000 per injury. Oftentimes, a fatality will cost up over $1 million, but what happens if it's not a fatality, but it's a serious brain injury, and you can no longer do tomorrow what you're doing right this very moment? Who's going to take care of you and foot that bill? Your insurance for a little while, but if it's that severe of a crash, your insurance is going to run out pretty quickly. And then the state picks up the rest of that. Taxpayer dollars. So what is that preventable collision we're talking about in distracted driving? It's when we're doing everything reasonable to avoid it. So when we are distracted, if our eyes aren't on the road and our hands aren't on the wheel and our brain isn't in the game, are we doing everything possible to avoid it? So I'd like to share with you now this next video here real quickly. We're not going to play the whole thing, but I want to give you an idea. This video is from 1950.
The motor car in the hands of the average man is rapidly facing extinction. Truly, the average man is a creature of strange and unorthodox habits. Take the case of Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker lives in a quiet, respectable neighborhood. He is a typical average man, considered a good citizen and of average intelligence. He is a kindly man, courteous, punctual, and honest.
Good morning, Mr. Walker.
Good morning to you, Mr. Geef. Lovely day.
Mr. Walker wouldn't hurt a fly, nor step on an ant. He believes in live and let live. Mr. Walker owns a motor car and considers himself a good driver. But once behind the wheel, a strange phenomenon takes place. Mr. Walker is charged with an overwhelming sense of power. His whole personality changes. Abruptly, he becomes an uncontrollable monster, a demon driver. Mr. Walker is now Mr. Wheeler, a motorist.
Hey, Chief, watch where you're going, stupid! Hey, you think you own the whole road?
Of course I own the road. My taxes pay for them. I voted for road bonds. I paid for
So I share that video. I share that video because it was in 1950. That video is online and you can find it also on our website page with some of the resources that I will provide for you later. We are dealing with the very same things we were dealing with in 1950 today. Other drivers, people overtaking other drivers, distracted driving. And when you are stressed behind the wheel, you accelerate, you brake more frequently, you drive at high speeds, you overtake other vehicles, you don't stop at crosswalks, and you're 9.8 times more likely to be involved in a crash. The difference between that video and today is we have solutions and prevention mechanisms to help us. We know more about what to do behind the wheel to prevent these things from happening. So what is distracted driving? What really is it? It's really quite simple. Distracted driving is doing another activity, any activity, that takes the driver's attention away from the task at hand, which is driving. Whether it's eating or on the phone or reading a book or a mental or cognitive distraction. It's anything that takes your attention away from the task of driving. And here's the issue. Distracted driving is extremely dangerous. More than 32,000 crashes were distracted driving related from 2018 to 2022 in Minnesota, contributing to 126 serious injuries and 22 fatalities. That we know of. Distracted driving incidents are very, very hard to be able to tell. There's a lot of data that goes into it when you pull up to that crash to be able to really determine. So this is the data that we know, yep, 100% sure it was a distracted driving incident. I want you to look at this. Now you can see that road work sign ahead reduced to 1 lane. It couldn't be any larger. The road work construction is up ahead of this site. And look at the car that comes up behind. Now, in a distracted driving incident, this is very, very common. Never takes their foot off the gas, and I think I'm going to go right here. Nobody goes out of the door in the morning and thinks, I'm going to drive from A to B, and this is how I'm going to start my day. In fact, how many of you got up this morning and thought, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to drive from A to B? Or did you get in your vehicle this morning and think, I'm going to drive from A to B and I'm going to get there safely? There's a number of things that are occurring already out on our infrastructure. We have road work and work zones that are being set up. There's flooding going on. Today, the weather was not as nice, which caused for traffic. We need to be paying attention to the task at hand. People who use a cell phone while driving are 4 to 5 times more likely to be in an injury-causing crash. And as I mentioned earlier when we started this, we are noticing, even though Minnesota does have a hands-free law, more and more people are getting back into old habits. They're putting that phone right up to their ear. I'm not sure if you can see me, but they're holding the phone up to their voice like a walkie-talkie. That is not hands-free. The phone cannot be in your hand, needs to be one touch or mounted. One touch or mounted. And here's the data with phones. An average American prior to the pandemic is spending about 5 hours and 24 minutes on their mobile device each day. So if you work 8 hours a day and you're spending 5 hours and 24 minutes on your mobile phone, where is that time occurring? I'm quite certain people don't go home at the end of the day and sit on their couch for 5 hours just to be on their phone. So we really need to be taking into consideration, when am I utilizing my phone? 6.65 billion smartphones users are across the world. And that is it's more than half of our website traffic. So people are utilizing their phones for everything today. They use it as their computer. They use it as their connection to their family, their friends, and their loved ones. It's a great tool, not behind the wheel. And when you're texting, it takes about 4 to 5 seconds to send that text message. That is the same as going 55 miles an hour, the length of a football field, blindfolded. But let me ask you this. When you're driving down the road and you see those really cute, darling little things on the side of the road, some are black and white. They say 65 or 70. How fast do you go? So are you now driving 75 miles an hour, the length or further, blinded of a football field? And please remember, when you text and go down the road, you're 23 times more likely to crash. Now, I understand we're talking today with the safe drivers. I get it. But how frequently do we give ourselves the, okay, well, I'm the safe person. I can talk on my phone, or I'm the safe texter. It's everyone else. Again, no more blame game. We need to start taking personal responsibility when we get behind the vehicle. And here's some data on texting. Quite honestly, the biggest piece of this data is that smartphone users right now would rather send a text message than make a phone call. It's simpler, it's easier, it doesn't take as much time. The average US smartphone user, in addition to that 5 hours, spends about 26 minutes a day texting. 26 minutes a day texting. And 81% of Americans do engage in text messages and emailing. So now I want to show you this video here. How would you like to be that car stopped at the stoplight? The vehicle behind them never took their foot off the brakes. That is how quickly a distracted driving incident can occur. Again, we don't plan for them. All we get to do is deal with the aftermath. And one thing I'd like to mention in a specific incident like this, one thing you will not typically see at a crash site of a distracted driving crash is skid marks, because more often than not, they will not step on their brake. Excuse me. Now, in this particular video, I'd like to point out green in Minnesota, when we get to an intersection, no longer means go. It means proceed with caution each and every time. Please make sure that the vehicles coming from either direction have every intention of stopping. And this is included in distracted driving too. If you get up to that stop sign intersection or that four-way stoplight intersection, and your brain is doing something else, or you're looking down and you see out of your peripheral green and you just step on your light or step on your gas, it's so important to make sure that the vehicles from the other direction have every intention of stopping. Because too frequently right now in Minnesota and nationwide, cars are speeding up for yellow, and the 2 and 3 cars behind them are comfortably going through red. And this is how quickly an intersection incident can get out of hand. Jumped the green, ran the red. Now, if you're paying attention before you left and went through that intersection, the black car left in that intersection says one of two things. There's a vehicle coming that has no intention of stopping, or there's some pedestrians that are going to be trying to cross the road. Please, if you're paying attention behind the wheel, pay attention to your surroundings. Look for clues from other drivers. There are 3 types of distractions: visual, manual, and cognitive. These visual, manual, and cognitive distractions are pretty easy concepts to grasp. Visual. We have to have our eyes on the road. We have to be taking it in, scanning, making sure we have following distance, looking at our mirrors, paying attention to the task at hand and what's in front of us. Manual. Hands on the wheel. Your hands need to be on the wheel, so if you need to make that quick stop or you need to adjust or take an evasive maneuver, your hands are on the wheel to point your vehicle in the direction you'd like for it to go. These are your hands. Down below your waist are your knees. Knees never belong on the wheel. At 10, 4, 6, and 3, or wherever you can get them, you are not going to have time to get your hands back on the wheel to turn it in the area you need to go. So visual, eyes on the road, pretty easy. Manual, hands on the wheel, I get it. Now cognitive. Cognitive is such a big piece of driving that we take for granted. If our brain is not on the game, it does not matter if our eyes are on the road and our hands are on the wheel, because we are going to look through whatever it is we see in a ton of blindness. Our brain is going to take over and we develop in a ton of blindness. So let me ask you this, do you multitask or do you task switch? And I just want you to think about that for a second. Multitask or task switch? Multitasking does not exist. Our brains are parallel, and we cannot do two complex tasks at once. Our brains simply don't allow it. We can toggle from task to task. We can be great managers, great prioritizers, but we cannot do two complex tasks at once. Our brain simply won't allow it. So what I would like for you to do is, along with me, let's say our ABCs. So let's start with 1, 2, 3. Let's count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I'd like for you to say your ABCs. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now what I would like for you to do is take those two tasks and put them together up to G. A1, B2, C3, D4. How far are you getting? It's not a simple task. Two very easy things we did since we were knee-high to a grasshopper, our 1, 2, 3s and our ABCs. But when we're asked to put those two things together, our brain toggles from one task to the next. So if it's difficult for us to take two simple tasks that we've learned and known forever and put those together, then why is it that we think we can get into a vehicle, listen to the radio, play with some dials, have a conversation with a passenger, and drive? Are we driving, or are we cognitively distracted on the task at hand? So I want to ask you this. When we get behind the wheel, are we being mindful, or is our mind too full to concentrate on the task at hand? Because it's extremely important to have a clear mind when you get behind the wheel of a vehicle to do the most dangerous thing you may do all day today. Multitasking is a brain drain. Switching from task to task to task is not an efficient way and an effective way to complete a process. You're selecting bits and pieces from one thing. Your memory and your brain takes time for it to encode and store. It is much easier to spend an amount of time on one task like driving and then completely toggle to the next task. So you may ask yourself, why hands-free? Back in 2019, we passed legislation in Minnesota for a hands-free law. That 2617 number is the average number somebody touches their phone in the United States every day. Now that's touches, not time spent on the phone. So I want for you to think about that. How many times do you pick it up? Do you swipe? Do you type? How many letters do you type? How many times are you in social media when you're just swipe, swipe, swipe? The main reason why we passed hands-free is to save lives. We know the ingredients to prevent it. And crashes, slow down, pay attention, have our eyes on the road and our hands on the wheel, don't drive impaired. We choose not to. Hands-free is not risk-free. Being in a conversation is extremely distracting. Hands-free is a if you must. If you must make a call, it needs to be hands-free. And I ask people when I go out and I do presentations and we're out together, what is one thing, if you had to think right now, what is the one phone call that you feel you would need to prioritize behind the wheel. And I want you to ask yourself, is it worth it? A lot of times I will receive, well, if it's an emergency, I don't want to miss that call. Behind the wheel of a vehicle is the last place you want to receive a call that is going to be an emergency or stressful or create anxiety, because your brain is going to take over, and then who's driving that vehicle? Distracted driving and tunnel vision and speed is extremely important for you to recognize. The faster you go, and it is the same with distracted driving, the more distracted you are, the less peripheral vision you have, so you don't see things on the sides of the roads. And this next screen is a great depiction of what that is like. So I want you to look at this. Your peripheral vision at higher speeds goes away, and when you're distracted driving, you develop tunnel vision. You can no longer see the bikers on the left-hand side of the screen, the gentleman on his phone trying to cross in front of you, anyone who comes out, oncoming traffic. Again, that simulation when we showed about the going down and texting and driving going the length of a football field. So now you have tunnel vision and you can't see anything on the sides. Why are we distracted drivers? It's really quite simple. We are extremely busy people that have many roles. We put on our work hat, we take our work hat off, we put on our personal hat, we might be a coach, we might have many other things that we do. We have fast-paced lives, we have pressure deadlines. You may get into your vehicle in the beginning of the morning and you're thinking about projects that you have to do all day. And before you know it, you look up and you've driven from point A to point B and don't have a clue how you got there. If that's happening on a regular basis, change your route. When you change your route, it forces you to pay attention. This list goes on and on. We could sit here for 45 minutes and talk about, well, why are we distracted drivers? What can you do? What can you do to prevent this from happening? Don't wait to plan your route. A lot of us really, I am on the road a lot and I use my GPS. When you plug in your coordinates into your GPS, have an idea of where those coordinates are going to take you. So you're not in that far left lane and hear about your exit and feel like you need to go across 4 lanes of traffic to get to your exit. I promise you, the GPS is eventually going to reroute you before you get to Canada or Iowa. Pull over where it's safe and legal to check into messages or get on that phone if you're tempted. Secure everyone and everything that could be a distraction. So if that phone is one of those things that might be a distraction, I recommend putting it in the back so it doesn't even tempt you. Preset as many of the climate control and radio that you can, so you are not juggling with the radio dials, so you are not tempted to be playing with the radio and adjusting the heat. And this is especially important too if you're in an unfamiliar vehicle. Please make sure that you are familiar with vehicles when you get into them. How often have you been at a family occasion or somewhere where there's a lot of people and you run out of ice and somebody throws you the keys and says, hey, take my car, go get ice. And all you really want to do is take a left-hand turn, but the blinkers are coming on and the windshield washers are coming on. And now you're anxious and you have anxiety when all you really want to do is turn, but you weren't familiar with that car. All of a sudden that distraction kicks in. Be mindful instead of having a mindful. Be engaged with yourself and everything that's around you before you get in the wheel. Have a clear mind. Make sure your eyes are on the road and your hands are on the wheel to avoid those anxiety and those cognitive distractions. April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. Take a break from your phone. It takes 30 days to create a habit. If you find that you need to be on your phone or you're tempted by your phone in your vehicle, stow it for 1 month. So it becomes a habit where you're not dependent upon it when you get behind the wheel, and it's not even going to bother you. I want to share with you some resources that are available through the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety. This is a shot of our website that is developed. If you go to resources and then click on distracted driving, there is a number of different resources that are readily available for you to share with your employees, your friends, and your family. There's a number of fact sheets, infographics, social media graphics that we've partnered with. These are from the Department of Public Safety. Here is some more information on if you want to implement tools for employers on hands-free, share some resources on the hands-free infographic, what's right, what's wrong. There's some great videos and PSAs out there. There's additional tools for employers and hands-free resources. And the National Safety Council has some phenomenal information to get you engaged in the national campaign. Please remember, distracted driving doesn't only happen in April. It happens every day, 365 days a year. This is something that we all need to make a conscious effort to curb. And always, always buckle up. Everybody, every seat, and every time. It will increase your chance of survival by 50%. By 50%. I don't ever do a webinar or a presentation without sharing this very last video.
So I just confess that I text and drive. If I get a text, I'll look at my phone.
It's definitely texting.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Snapchat. I do Snapchat and drive sometimes.
Is that like making Snapchats or watching them?
Making them.
A, texting is like my main form of communication.
Boredom, honestly.
And B, well, no, I guess no, it's really just A.
I've only never done it at stoplights. I've always been really good about it.
The passenger has a pretty important role driving now, where they're like, oh, red light, red light.
If someone that you like texts you, you're like, you can't just like let it sit there without just knowing what they said.
Because what if something exciting's happening or something happened?
Like, every time I do it, I think about it, I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I just keep doing it.
So I'd like to, want to introduce you to a friend of ours.
My name is JC.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Dash.
Justin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I just really quickly want to have a chat, tell you what happened to me. When I was 21 years old, driving home from my college graduation ceremony, driver on his phone was so distracted. He turned left into the intersection at a red light. Another car, an 18-wheeler, swerved to miss him and hit my family's car. And the resulting collision actually killed both of my parents. I spent 2 months in the hospital fighting for my own life, and then 2 more months in a rehab hospital, learning how to walk again, learning how to speak again, learning how to dress myself and how to feed myself. I live with a partially paralyzed body. I didn't have my daddy to walk me down the aisle when I got married.
Having sort of met JC, because you look at JC and sort of give those same reasons.
Usually I use my phone to change a song on. I try to use it as little as possible, but
I'm not gonna look at my phone ever again.
Honestly, if I have been sitting at a red light, I'll glance down to see if my mom's texting me, but the people's lives that are impacted from something that is so stupid.
I can assure you on my drive home right now, I'm not going to use my phone and drive, and I'm not going to do it when I go to work tomorrow and the next day after that until, it becomes a habit, and that just doesn't happen at all.
I know this is hard. I'm sorry. It's hard for me too, but this is real. You have the power to really actually make a difference and do something about it.
Thank you.
That's an extremely powerful video, but I truly believe each one of us has the power to make a difference by changing what we do behind the wheel and by taking control of our driving behaviors. It's really simple. Keeping your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel, your brain in the game. Making sure that we're driving for conditions not impaired and making sure that buckles on. One thing I always like to do before I leave, and I am going to try to stop sharing and buzz back in so I can see you, is I want for you all to think of the 5 most important people in your life. You have hundreds. I want you to think of 5. Do all of you have those 5 people in mind? Did any of you put you on that list? Because the 5 people you thought about don't want to live without you any more than you want to live without them. And it's all about getting back and forth safely on a regular basis each and every day. And that can happen if we just change one driving behavior behind the wheel. And in turn, that will make our culture for all road users safer. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions. Feel free to go onto our website and help yourself to any resources, including the video I just shared. And if you would like a copy of this presentation, it will be posted on the website probably by tomorrow. Oh, I did see a couple people put in here in the chat what color the yield signs were. So thank you for playing along. Any questions? Anybody want to unmute yourself or have any questions? Thank you, Loretta. Yes, any other advice for new and teen drivers? Absolutely. When it comes to novice driving, we know that the teen brain doesn't really develop until they're 25. So it is so incredibly important, especially in terms of distracted driving, to really limit the passengers in the vehicle, because we know with each additional passenger that is increases the ability for a distracted driving issue. And experience is so incredibly important. The more experience they can have behind the wheel, the better off that they will be. Any other questions? That was a great question. All right, well, I'm just going to sit on the line here in case something comes up. You can go ahead. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. These presentations are readily available. I'd be more than happy to work with your organization as well. If there's somebody who would like for me to come in and feel like this is something you'd like to share within your organization, just let me know.